So this video is all about division of whole numbers, and we're going to see some division that works out nicely and some division that maybe there's a remainder for, which we'll get to in a little bit. So let's start off with just a definition. So division is the act of splitting a group of items into equal parts, right? So here's my quick example of this. If I ask you to do 12 divided by 3, what I actually mean when I say 12 divided by 3 is I have 12 items, and there are 3 people that I'm going to give those items to. I've decided that I'm going to split them. I need to take these 12 items and give everybody, all 3 of these people, the same amount. And so in this case, the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to just split it up and say, in this case, here, oh, can't have it covering up your numbers. Let me get rid of this. Fill color. Okay, I can't. So I'm just going to use my pen. So I'm going to say, in this case, this group here, okay, and this group here, okay, and this last one here. And if you notice, I've made 3 groups out of the 12, and everybody's getting the same amount of stars, right? Everybody's getting 4. And so I would say in my answer is how many, when I'm saying 12 divided by 3, I'm saying 12 items. There are 3 people that need to get these items. How many do each person get? Well, I was able to divide the 12 equally into parts, and so I would say each of these people gets 4 stars, okay? So here's the issue that we're going to run into eventually. Okay, so let's see if I can find my fancy tool for this. Okay, so let's say I had an extra star. I had a 13th star. So now my problem becomes 13 divided by 3. So now how do I take these 13 items and make sure that everybody gets the same amount? Right? I can't just say, well, I have this extra star, I'm going to hold on to it. I can't say, I'm just going to give it to the first person and he's going to have 5. I need to make sure that everybody gets the same amount of stars. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 3rd star and I'm actually going to split it into parts. Okay? And this is where fractions are going to start in. Everybody's going to get 4 whole stars, and then everybody's going to get 1 part of this last extra star. Okay? So we're going to actually have to start thinking about how many whole groups can I give before I get to a point where it's going to start to be unfair, and that's the challenging part of division. Okay? So here's the last little note. Division is the opposite of multiplication, and if you notice in a nice simple problem here, the answer that I got, that there were 4 stars per person, times this number right here that I divided by the number of people, when I multiply these back together, I get the group. Okay? So 3 times 4, the answer and what I divided by will multiply together and give me back the total that I started with. Okay? So we're going to look at a few problems and kind of build our way up to the point where we get to some of these extra problems that have extra parts. But let's start off with something that looks like 108 divided by 12. Okay? So 108 divided by 12, let's start off with this. I'm asking you to find the quotient, and so quotient is the answer to a division problem. So we now have 4 key vocabulary words that we're going to look for. Sum is the answer to an addition problem. Difference is the answer to subtraction. Product for multiplication, and now quotient for division. So these are just key words that you might see show up a little later where you're not told which operation to use, but that keyword is going to tell you what to do. Okay? So here's the first important part, and this is going back to what I just said here about division is the opposite of multiplication. If you know your multiplication facts well, which when we did multiplication you had the nice big multiplication table up to 12 times 12, you can look on that one, and if I were to look down the 12 times tables, okay, if I look down the 12 times tables, I will find in this case the number 108 on there. Okay? In this case it would be in the 12 times 9 column. Okay? So if you know your math facts, your multiplication facts, they're memorized, they're ready to go, you can look at that and say, okay, I know that 12 times 9 is 108, so that's going to work. So here's a couple of other simple examples. If I did something like 35 divided by 7, we know that the answer to this is 5 because we know that 5 times 7 gives me 35. Okay? If I had something like 121 divided by 11, I know that my answer is 11 because I know my multiplication facts, and I know 11 times 11 gives me 121. Okay? So this is really, really, really important because once we get to more complicated ones, you're going to need to know those facts so you can kind of do things in parts, or at least get as close as you can. Okay? So one possibility is you know your math facts, you know that 12 times something gives me 108, or 7 times something gives me 35. You can use those facts and instantly know your answer. Okay? But what happens if we get something like this? And now we're sitting here saying, I don't know how, or I can't think of a number 12 times something that gives me 110, okay, what you're going to have to do, and again, you can use this chart as a reference until you have them memorized, is think, how close can I get before I go over and I have done too much? So in this case, I'm thinking 12 times, let's just make some guesses, 12 times 7, okay, well that's 84, right? So if I did 12 times 7, okay, that's 84, okay, 12 times 8, okay, well that's 96, I'm still not to 110, so I'm still good. 12 times 9, well we just said a second ago that was 108, so we're still good there. 12 times 10 is 120. This is too much, right? 120 is over 110. 108 still below. So I'm going to say in this case, too bad, this one doesn't work. So I'm going to say at this case, I can at least give everybody 9 items, right? So I can say there's 12 groups that I'm trying to split up this 110 in. Everybody gets at least 9. So 9 whole items out of the 110, and that gets me to 108, right? So I'm sitting here saying, okay, well I have these 2 extra ones now, right? I have 110 things total. I've given out 108 of them, and I have these 2 extra ones. For right now, what we're going to do is we're going to say, just put a little R here to say remaining out of the 110, there are 2. Okay? So what this means is that I was able to give each of the 12 groups, right? The 12 groups that I was giving items to, I started with my 110 and I said, you get one, and you get one, and you get one, and I went down the line and I kept doing that, and at the end everybody had 9 items, and then I looked in my hand and there were still 2 left over. Okay? And so I'm saying I can't give everybody another one, so I'm finished. Okay? So we're going to talk in a little bit about what to do with this going forward, but for right now we're just going to say I can give everybody 9 whole items, and there are going to be 2 left over that I can't hand out to anybody yet. Okay? So let's talk about another one, 248 divided by 8. So now we're kind of to the point where, like, I don't know my 8 times tables all the way up to 248, so I can't quickly just make a list or look at my reference and try to figure that out. So this is the point where now we're going to start breaking it up into smaller problems, right, and trying to deal with those. So you're probably familiar with this little division house, okay? And so we're going to convert it from this form, this horizontal form, into the division house to help us to just organize ourselves, okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the big number, or I'll say this correctly, the first number, okay, what we're dividing 248 items, we're going to place that underneath. The number of times that we're dividing this goes on the outside right here, okay? And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go, can I do 8 divided by this first number, okay? And in this case we're saying not really I can't, because I can't take just 2 things, I can't take 2 things and divide them 8 ways. That doesn't work. So I'm going to skip that one, and then I'm going to look at it and say, well, what if I put together the first 2? Can I look at that and say, can I divide that nicely? And in this case, I can. I can take 24 items and divide them among 8 people. Knowing my multiplication facts, I know that this comes out to be 3, right? 3 times 8 is 24. I can divide that nicely. It works perfectly. Okay? So I'm going to say I divided this 24 up 3 times, to give 8 times to give everybody 3 items. So now here's the way that we kind of go through here and make sure we're keeping things in line. So I put the 3 right above the 4 because that's where this number ended. And now I'm going to multiply. I'm going to say 3 times 8 is 24, and I'm going to place that number right below the number that I have here. Okay, so I'm going to say take 3 times 8 is 24. Okay, and I'm going to subtract. Okay, I'm going to subtract these away because I've kind of used up this 24. They're no longer a part of my number. Okay, and so I'm going to subtract, and this becomes 0. Right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look to the next digit, the 8, and I'm going to bring that down. Okay, so I don't need to write 0, 8. 0, 8 is just 8. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to use this number, and I'm going to say 8 divided by 8, and I'm going to place that above this row. So I'm going to go right up, and I'm going to say 1. Okay, so 1 times 8 gives me 8, and I'm going to subtract again because I've used them up, and this comes out to be 0. Okay, so I'm done. I went to the very, very last digit on the inside here, brought it all the way down. I don't have anything else left to bring down. I'm going to say I'm finished. My answer is 31. 248 divided by 8, the answer, the quotient, is 31. Okay, so sometimes you're going to have these numbers where you don't know your math facts, and you're going to have to go through and use this method of, we call this long division, to sit here and kind of break it up into smaller parts. I do know what 8 divided into 24 is. I do know what 8 divided into 8 is. Right? So I'm breaking that big number up into smaller parts. Okay? So let's try one, another one that's kind of like this, but maybe things don't work out so nicely. So again, I don't know my 7 times tables all the way up to 491. So the first number goes on the inside, the second number goes on the outside. 7 does not go into 4 because 4 is too small. Okay? 7 does go into 49, and it goes in 7 times. Okay? So I'm going to say 7 times 7 gives me 49. Okay? So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to say 7 times 7, this is a multiplication, gives me 49. That's going to go right here, okay? Lined up nicely with the 7, and I'm going to subtract. Again, this is 0, and then I'm going to bring down the next digit, which again, I don't need to write that leading 0, so I'm going to get rid of it. And now I'm saying 7 into 1. So there are 7 people, and I only have 1 item left over, and I'm saying I can't give that 1 item to 7 different people. I only have 1 item. So for right now, we're going to say the remainder that I can't use once I'm down to the very last digit is 1. Right? So this one, we're going to say we can divide this up 7 times with a remainder of 1. Okay? Something's going on there. Pause.